Hello and welcome to Tracy Mommy Reads. I am back again with another video. Today, I am going to be recording this video with this eyesore. I'm going to try the whole microphone thing. I personally don't think it's necessary. I think it's an extra step. But who knows? Maybe the quality of the audio will sound better. Um, I haven't had anyone ever tell me that, they couldn't hear my videos or that the audio quality was trash, but just trying something different. It was very cheap, so it may not even bring the kind of quality I'm looking for. So after, post-production, when I'm editing the video, I'll give my apologies then if it doesn't sound worth a damn. But we're going to try it. I don't know that I'm always going to use it, but we'll see. I feel like my voice projects enough, and my phone, I have one of the latest models of the phone that I use, and the tripod is close enough that I feel like that it picks up what I'm saying relatively easy, and it's always quiet, with maybe the occasional dog barking outside or trash pickup or something. But anyway, we shall see. Today, I have another book review, and I'm going to be talking about the book The Last Man on Earth by Shae Sanders. The Last Man on Earth. This book is billed as, you see it at the top, I don't know if you can see that, a survival romance. A survival romance. So let's get into what it's about here. I'm gonna peruse this blurb. So basically, what happens? There's this famous rapper named Villain. Him and his rowdy entourage. They are going to his bachelor party in Brazil, and they've chartered a private plane. So on the plane, there is a flight attendant or air hostess. I mean, she's pretty it's almost like she's the manager, because she's the only person. She's been doing this for a long time, and she exclusively works with private clients on chartered jets. So she kind of goes above and beyond a little bit from typical flight attendant on a commercial flight, right? And she gets paid a lot more money. And she's older than Villain. I think she has him maybe by a decade or so. She's very professional, very attractive, and he's immediately drawn to her. Like once the flight gets up in the well, when he first sees her, then when the flight gets in air and he sees how poised she is and everything. But he's still very rough around the edges. Came from humble beginnings and just blew up and got all this money and fame, and he just really, I think, has an ego and thinks that whatever he wants, he should be able to have. And she's not having it or him. So the flight goes on, everything's, smooth sailing, but then they hit some turbulence and it all goes to hell from there. So basically what happens is, and this is all in the blurb, the plane crashes. And when you're like headed to places like that, Brazil, and you're over all this water, there are little pocket islands in different places. And I guess the pilot was maybe trying to land on land somewhere, to keep them from hitting the water. And it was a successful land in that they didn't land directly in the water. They did hit an island, that was kind of out there in the middle of everything. But the survivors were few, very, very few. And, that tension that had been between Villain and Ariana, they like, hey, we got to work together now, because we got to try to figure out, let's get all this stuff off the plane, because we don't know how long we're going to be here. We got to try to survive. We got to try to see if we can get help. Let's check the black box, and just a myriad of things. They have to quickly become teammates, in a sense, to survive this thing. So Villain thinks, because of who he is and, everything, that, hey, I'm a superstar. They're already looking for me. We're probably gonna be here an hour. Like, we're gonna be here a couple of hours. And turns out they were in a really remote place, and they were there for long within an hour. So, the first day passes, first couple of days pass, a week or two passes. And so let's bring it back a little bit as to what was transpiring on this island this entire time, because you have to think at some point, which both of them, they were going back and forth between trying to be positive and not show how much they were really kind of like, oh my god, we might die here, right? And I think the thing that kind of made the story a bit is we see such character development with villain, because he goes from being like this, essentially, because I think he was in his 20s, like mid to late 20s, and he goes from being like this, like totally ego driven, spoiled kid, basically, to stepping up and letting his instincts kick in for survival, just not unlike what maybe he had to do when he was living in circumstances prior to becoming rich and famous. He really stepped up and made sure, his main goal was not only surviving but protecting Ariana. That side of him came out. We got to see that. He was making sure that she didn't have to do literally a lot of the heavy lifting, and he scouted the island for wood and for food, and because she had gotten injured when the plane first crashed. He was very lucky. He was the only person that didn't sustain injuries and that pretty much walked away unscathed. And they started to develop a friendship. Well, initially it was just totally, they were just depending on each other for survival, right? And for Ariana's side, she's always been so, straight laced and professional and keeping a calm demeanor, and, just part of her whole persona. She, allowed herself to realize she's only human and that she couldn't keep that up, that fake positivity or that toxic positivity, that she had to really get in touch with how she was feeling about their situation so that she could truly face it and be helpful to him, like, let's be realistic. Like, how long could we survive out here? What do we need to do? What does that look like? Let's really get real about our circumstances and start to move in the proper way, because they had set up like got leaves and sticks and wood and stuff to kind of protect them from the element by building fires and like a little place for them to sleep and everything. But they weren't close enough to water. And then when they got by the water, it was the wind. So they had to move, they had to make adjustments, they had to be smart and communicate with each other, which both their communication, that it improved vastly by being out there. You don't want people to have to read your mind, or you don't want to have silly little arguments or tit for tat things happening when it is literally life or death. Um, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Shae Sanders. I've read a few of her books, but primarily, she writes in it's romance trope, and because of the genre or subgenre, survival romance, there were the romance elements. So, a lot of it, I feel like, when people talk about trauma bonding, we share this thing that has broken both of us or that we both can relate to. And some people, they bond through that, and maybe there's romance. I personally feel like those were the vibes I was getting more than anything, was that they literally. And the title. Let me go back. The title alluded to, he was being very crass on the plane and telling her things like, basically, I could have you if I wanted you, and she was saying like, not if you were the last man on earth, So essentially, he became the last man on earth because it was just the two of them. And as the days and weeks and months went on, they didn't, this might be it. So they did, give into their attraction towards one another. I mean, because she found him attractive, whatever. But I feel like in the real world, had that never happened, I don't know that the two of them would have ever gotten together. Because I think just her, you know, like, and I won't even say stubbornness. I think she just wasn't going to give in to what he was, the way he was talking to her and treating her. She had just started to date a guy that she really liked. And remember, I said he was on his way to Brazil for his bachelor party. He was engaged. He had a whole woman back home that had his kid, right? And it was like an off and on, like relationship or whatever. But they had finally decided, okay, they were going to get married. But he was still, flirting with her or whatever, when they first got on the plane. But yeah, as they were there and they started talking, because, like if you don't know that you're ever going to see your people again or that you're ever going to get back to the life that you had, hey, might as well talk to this person, may as well, admit some of my fears, some of my transgressions, some of the things, that I'm not proud of, or some of the things that scare me. And they had started to develop this very deep connection talking to each other because there was nobody else to talk to, essentially. But then, like I said, they gave into the attraction, and that kicked in overdrive. Like, I guess it wasn't nothing else to do but take off your clothes. Keep your clothes off on the island. So once they did give into that, they gave into it. If you know, you know. But yeah, I don't know. I like their characters, and like I said, I like the arcs and how we saw the changes and the development. I just don't know that I bought them as like being a true couple outside of just having shared that horrible incident and that survival and kind of clinging to each other to keep their sanity and their hope or whatever. And I found it enjoyable, and I really um, enjoyed the parts where she, when they were on the island and the survival aspect of it, like the little things that the author infused and things you wouldn't even think about, with having to clean the water and how they came up with that and the things that they were thinking, just the whole survival piece of it and how you would react if you were trapped somewhere. I mean, you have essentially resources. And that's the thing about living on planet Earth. There are so many resources, right? Everything you could possibly need to survive, depending on your circumstances, but a lush island, but so many of us have gotten so used to like the creature comforts and the things that are instant that we don't have to worry about. You turn on your faucet, the water comes out. You put your cup up to the thing. If you have one of those kind of the water, you don't have to worry about whether it's tainted or if something is wrong with it. If you want something to eat, you can go around the corner to the grocery store or to a fast food place or a restaurant. When that type of stuff doesn't exist, could you survive? How would you make it? And just showing how they, through trial and error and maybe things that they remembered hearing or seeing like on a television show or something, they were able to incorporate that into their day-to-day living. I found that the most fascinating about the book. So, but I feel like after they got rescued, number one, the book just went into overdrive. And when I mean that, it sped up and like it went by so fast. And I just felt like it was really rushed. That ending was rushed. And also, I feel like slightly that villain, he reverted to kind of who he was when he got back into his environment. And, but Ariana, just from the instant that she like left the island, like she had changed drastically while she was there, but she stayed the way that she had changed. She didn't slip back into who she was. And I don't know. Let me go back to this blurb real quick because let me see. Okay, yeah. I'm not gonna say it because it'll be a spoiler, but yeah. Uh, yeah, something happened that would change both of their lives. We're just gonna say that. You can probably deduce what that is, but I'm not gonna say it. But yeah, I feel like it took Villain a minute to, and it's understandable because the thing you gotta understand too when we say that they were the only survivors in the plane they were going to. Remember, they were going to his bachelor party. Everybody on the plane was like Those were his people, a brother, a cousin, best friends, and he lost everybody. So I don't know that he even really fully dealt with that. So I was giving him a little grace, when they got back. But I feel like, he needed therapy ASAP, before anything. Like because the end game, because it was a happily ever after, was for them to be together, right? But I feel like he probably needed to take a little bit more time, because when he got back, it was like he had to step back into this role of this artist and this guy who made all this money, that all these people were depending on him for their livelihoods. Then you got to tell, your relatives that people are gone, and the funerals, and it was a lot. And it was very rushed. I feel like, because the book itself was only, oh well, no, this book was hella long. I thought it was in the 200s. It says 448 pages. I don't know if maybe we should have cut down some of the time on the island, or sped through some of that and then spent more time on the back end. For me, I feel like, as a reader, I would have wanted more of that, like how they kind of survived coming back to reality after being stranded on an island. But yeah, I felt like that part was rushed. I don't know. And I don't like these predicaments that sometimes authors put their characters in after these romantic entanglements. Um, but it is what it is. But yeah, I read the book because so many people at the time, I want to say, let's say if it had 1,000 reviews or ratings, it was all 5 stars, every last one of them. And so I was like, okay, I guess I need to read this, because, like I said, I had read some of her books before, and I don't know that it was good. It was engrossing. I don't think it was a 5 star read, but that's just me, and that's just my personal opinion on how the story was structured and how what I would have liked to have seen. And there are a lot of people who probably thought it was perfect just the way it was. I mean, obviously based on the star rating system, but I definitely would recommend it. It was something different. It had a different premise, different characters. And when I say different, I mean, a little unlike some of maybe typical like romance stories that you may have read. But the premise alone, I don't know that I've ever read a story where Black people were trapped on an island. Because that's one of those things, like, how would we do out there? Or trapped on the island or whatever. Like, because there's just so many things, like there's some stereotypes and things that are true, like about Black people. Maybe, if you dropped us somewhere where it was a bunch of dogs, or we had to swim our way out of something, would we make it? So I kind of was getting vibes like that initially, like, oh my God, these people are not gonna make it, like, just on a deserted island. But they did. They actually did. Um, I don't know. I feel like the descriptions of, like, the deaths and the crash, that could be somewhat triggering. I don't think, are there any other trigger warnings? I mean, just the idea of being in that type of isolation, like the mental stuff that started to happen to both of them while they were out there. But no, other than that, if you like stories that you don't know what's going to happen, you're kind of on that island with them. Like, as the time started to pass, I was even like, oh my God, are they not going to get rescued? Are they going to have to live on this island for the rest of their lives? Are they going to be able to make it? But yeah, when that rescue, helicopter came, and what was happening while they were, like circling them, and how that ended up becoming tabloid fodder. It got messy real quick. But yeah, like I said, I would definitely recommend it. And if you want to read something different, that's in the vein of a romance story, then I think you really enjoy The Last Man by Shae Sanders. If you haven't read The Last Man on Earth, I said The Last Man on Earth, let me know your thoughts in the comments. So what did you think about the story as a whole? Like, their time on the island versus when they got back, and kind of contrasting their relationship, that you think that it had what it took to survive the real world, Or do you think that relationship was just for the island? Let me know in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure that you like this video and go ahead and take the opportunity now to subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already. Thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you next week. Bye.